Hello, hello, hello. Happy Thursday. It is just me today because Natascha has been without power for 48 hours and I'm a little late because I wasn't even sure if I could get on. I don't know what was happening before, but here I am and it is January 9th, 2025. Welcome to the live broadcast of the Harness the Power of Planning podcast. And I guess I don't need these since I don't need headphones since Natascha isn't joining me. I don't have to hear what anyone else is saying. So, if you did know, Natascha and I live in the Los Angeles area, and we have been impacted by the fires that are burning. I think there are right now 5 fires that are burning, and really, it's hard to think about anything else when that's happening. So, today's Harness the Power of Planning podcast will be about Emergency Preparedness Fire Edition. Now, if you listen to our podcast, then you know that I did do an emergency preparedness with a focus on earthquakes late last year. I'm sure if you just do a search, or I can put it in the show notes when I put this up later as a podcast. So I will link to that podcast if you're interested in it. And so today is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be about Emergency Preparedness Fire Edition. It's also going to be about my thoughts as I am in the middle of what's happening. You might notice that I don't have my earrings on. I don't have my yellow shirt. This is showing up as the best I can in a stressful situation. And that's a lot of what we talk about in Beyond Your Wildest Dreams is giving yourself the grace to go through whatever it is you're going through. And right now, this was the best I could do. So I'm going to talk about Emergency Preparedness Fire Edition. I did pack up our cars. I did evacuate. We did evacuate my mother-in-law. We have been following the news closely. We do have friends who have lost their homes, and it is an ongoing, evolving situation. And so whatever I talk about today is going to reflect that. The second thing I'm going to talk about is it is the beginning of the new year. And for the majority of you, I hope that your day is nice and normal, as in you do not have a crisis that you are dealing with. And to that end, I'm going to talk about something that we discuss in the Harness the Power of Planning course, which is coming up with the ideal recipe for your year. I like to think of my year kind of like a soup, if you will. I need some onions in there. I need vegetables, that sort of thing. So we're going to talk about how you can kind of build your ideal year by thinking of it as a recipe. I'm a very food-oriented person. And then finally, I'm going to officially start this podcast by pulling a card from this box of sayings that I keep on my desk that I just love. I find it very insightful and uplifting. And so today's card is one day at a time. This is enough. Live in the present and make it so beautiful that it will be worth remembering. Ida Scott Taylor. Yes. It's hard to think about how to make today beautiful, but I did want to show up because so much of what we talk about at BYWD is about how to show up as your best self no matter what else is going on around you. And one of the things that I did do this morning was I followed my morning ritual because I woke up feeling a little depressed because of everything that's going on and just the weight of what's going on. And it would have been very easy to just stay in bed and check the news or stay in bed and read so that I could just, have a little escapism. But my morning ritual is what really keeps me grounded, and this is one of our 4 workbooks. You see they're all short, they're all designed to be gone through in about an hour or less, and this is all about it's called Rock Your Morning, 3 Simple Steps to Take Control of Your Morning. I used to feel like my morning was a train heading towards me full speed, and I just had to, like, figure out how to survive the impact. And when I came up with a morning ritual, all of that shifted, and so today, even more important on a day like today when there are crises all around you, it was very important for me to follow my morning ritual because my morning ritual just helps me feel grounded. It helps me feel like I'm taken care of. There's actually brain science behind the benefits of any kind of touch. So self-touching, putting things on my face is actually a way of, self-soothing. And so I knew immediately I was going to just go straight into my morning ritual. I have my warm lemon water. I did my dry brushing. I put everything away in the dish rack. Putting things away in your dish rack, Allegra, that's part of your morning ritual. Yes, it is, because I love the calm of how my kitchen looks when everything is put away. It doesn't last long, but for that moment, I get to take my morning supplements, sip my lemon water, and just kind of like, "Ah, it's clean in here. What a nice feeling." So, I guess that would be one of the things that I would say to you is that if you are in the middle of a crisis, remember to take care of yourself because no one can take care of you except you. And you're not thinking clearly if you're not taken care of, if you're not hydrated, if you're not fed. So we always go back to self-care. Self-care is healthcare. And so that was what I did this morning as we are in the midst of this. The other thing I did was I did check all of the apps. I am on the Citizen app. I'm on the Watch Duty app, which apparently I was told is the app that firefighters use. And so I have been looking at those and looking at where the fire is, where the evacuation orders are, who do I need to check in on in my extended family. Natascha and I have been in regular communication. She basically can only text and call. She has no internet. She has no electricity. My thoughts are with Natascha. She might be coming to my house at some point soon. Apparently, they went through all of their ice cream yesterday because they have no power, so they're eating the frozen stuff. Makes sense. So, in this emergency preparedness fire edition, what I wanna say is something that I have been noticing from people, who are going through this right now, is people waiting to get the evacuation order before they leave their homes, or even waiting to get the evacuation order before they start packing up. And what I would say is that the best time to pack up is when you are calm. The evacuation order was nowhere near us. It was at least 12 miles away from us when I started packing up my house. And actually about, I don't know, 10 years ago, there was a fire that was about 20 miles away from us, but again, high winds are very uncertain. You just never know when there's gonna be a gust. It only takes an ember to start a wildfire. And so about 10 years ago, there was a fire about 20 miles away, and I had packed up the car. So what I would say to you is perhaps reevaluate when you start moving and realize that the evacuation order is kind of like the finish line, but the marathon before that finish line is you starting to think about what you need to do. My grandmother is 100 years old and she is bedridden, and we are still about 12 to 15 miles away from an evacuation line, but we have started to think about what it would take to move my grandmother. because it would take really like an ambulance, or we'd have to, find a hospital to move her to. And when you have 5 fires going on simultaneously, your options are limited. So, yesterday, I started packing up. What did I pack? Photo albums that are irreplaceable. Uh, Creative work that I am working on, and I didn't wanna lose those notes. My daughter brought her sketchbook, her notebooks. Of course, we packed up our computers, jewelry, important documents such as passport, birth certificates, death certificates, deeds to the house, insurance information, all of that. I have all of that organized in a grab and go bag that is fire resistant. It's marketed as fireproof, but it's not fireproof. It's fire resistant. And the reason why I didn't get one of the big concrete, truly fire resistant containers for those documents is because those things weigh 50 pounds by themselves. And once you put in all this paper, because paper is very heavy, that's like a 70-pound thing that you have to carry around. So I opted for a lighter version that I can actually lift. Maybe you want to have two versions. Maybe you want to keep a fireproof safe somewhere on your property with one copy of the documents, and then you have a bag that you can take with you with another set of copy of the documents. And this bag is not very big. It's about I'm I'm doing portrait orientation right now, so I can't really use my hands but it probably measures about 15 inches wide by about 12 inches tall, and then maybe it's about 5 or 6 inches deep. So that has all of the important paperwork. Also, of course, prescription drugs, um, glasses or contact lenses if you wear them, and then the solutions to go with them. If you have pets, pet food, clothing, warm clothing. Maybe you want to bring a pack of cards, some paper to write with, and some sort of writing implements, because if you are having to shelter somewhere, it's good to keep your mind active. Um, the other thing too is that I did pack food and water, because if you're going somewhere, you don't want to show up and not have something to drink and eat. So I would say about 3 days supply of food if you can, and it doesn't have to be refrigerated food. It can be rice and beans and lentils and dry cereal, that sort of thing, which travels really well. It can also be, produce that doesn't need to be refrigerated, like fruits. So and nuts. So we packed everything in 2 rolling duffel bags that are quite large. They're kind of too big for luggage, but they're great for emergency preparedness, and they have handles and rollers, so if you have to roll them. And I also put in a tent and 3 sleeping bags in there in case, again, we're having to shelter somewhere, don't wanna have to rely on available bedding. We packed that up as well. And then we also brought with us our camping backpacks, which are always packed as our emergency preparedness bags. And these were created for earthquake preparedness, but they have a lot of things in them that one would want in an emergency situation. Perhaps not if you're sheltering with friends or even at a physical shelter, but, worst case scenario, you're sheltering in a park. So things like water purification tablets, they have, goggles and masks, which are really important in disaster situations because there's a lot of particulate in the air. No matter if it's a fire or an earthquake or a tsunami or whatever, there's dust and debris whipping around. You need to protect your eyes and your nose so that you can function. And so everything was packed up. Our car was packed up. We did unpack the car. I had to go through and actually get out like my glasses and prescription drugs and that sort of thing. However, everything is basically still packed and by the front door just in case, because at least one of the fires is still advancing, kind of near us, and so it's a real situation. One other thing that we packed is, a portable power station. We have this one that is showing up on the screen right now, the Jackery Power Station 1500. This is a fantastic power station. It's what we take with us camping. It is silent, it charges with solar panels, and it can run traditional household appliances. So that's one thing that I didn't know when I initially bought a power station, was that there are some that are not powerful enough to run your refrigerator. So I made sure to buy one that was powerful enough, and this one, the 1500, is powerful enough that you can just use standard household appliances. You don't have to use, like, a mini fridge or a mini stove or that sort of thing. So that's something to think about, and that's something that we pack, and this is pretty heavy. It does have its own wheelie cart that I have for it in case of an emergency, and so you might be thinking, "Wow, this sounds like a lot of stuff." It was a lot of stuff. It was basically each of us would have had a backpack, and each of us would have had a wheelie cart. So my child probably would have had the Jackery, the portable station wheelie cart, and my husband and I would have had the big duffel bag wheelie carts, but it would have been enough that we could have carried it if we did not have a car available, or if we were stuck in some sort of traffic, as many people unfortunately were. So, think about this now when you're not in a crisis situation. As I was saying to my neighbors who were surprised to see us packing up the car, I said, "I believe the best time to plan for a disaster is when you're calm, because then you're not going to forget things." And, like prescription drugs, my prescription drugs are hormone therapies. They're not keeping me alive. So it would be possible for me to forget it in an emergency. However, they do protect my heart and my brain and just make me function better on a daily basis, so I want those. So pack when you're calm, and you'll pack more strategically, if you will. And so, I would encourage you, if you haven't thought about emergency preparedness, to do some preparation. I personally find it calming to be prepared. Preparation is just another form of planning, right? And I have found that for me, planning makes everything easier. And actually, brain science has shown that planning helps reduce anxiety and stress. And I can tell you that I felt my anxiety level go way down as soon as our car was packed up. Oh, and I just see here, I do have a QR code for an emergency preparedness document that I did put together for BYWD listeners. It probably has an earthquake, focus, but definitely it's a great base document for you to use. I wouldn't say I did anything radically different because this is a fire rather than an earthquake, except that I did grab our masks and our goggles sooner. Like yesterday, I did walk the dog with a mask on because the particulate in the air. Whereas, with an earthquake, you either need the mask or you don't need the mask. With a fire, there was a little more flexibility there. Um, Ready.gov is also a really good website to go to for emergency preparedness. So check that out if you haven't done it before. And definitely download some apps that will help you stay informed about any emergency situations going on in your area. I belong to a few of them. One that is specifically with regards to earthquakes in California. And then I also have Citizen and Watch Duty, as I mentioned earlier. And, get prepared when you don't need to get prepared, because that's the best time to do it. Whew. Okay. So, part 2 of the Harness the Power of Planning podcast, is talking about the year in front of you. It is the beginning of the year, and scientists have documented that humans, we get excited about what's called fresh starts. It's called the fresh start effect. And the beginning of the year is a fresh start. People often think of their birthdays as a fresh start, but honestly, any tomorrow can be a fresh start. Any day is the perfect time to work on the life that you want, whatever that is. And one way that I like to think about the new year, and happy new year to everyone wishing me a new year in the chat. Thank you. Happy new year to you too. One way that really helps me to think about, because a year, it can be challenging to think about how to plan your year because it's just a long period of time. And in BYWD, we do ask people to think about their lives, and then we kind of just like work backward from there. And then eventually we get to a year, and then we talk about, your month and then your week and your day, because we live in the day, but days add up quickly, right? There's a saying that the days crawl and the years fly. All of a sudden, 5 years have passed, and you're thinking to yourself, huh, there are things I wanted to do in these 5 years that I did not get done. Well, you probably didn't get them done because you didn't plan for it in your day or in your week, which is where we actually live. So I find that a really helpful way to think about one's year is to think about it like a recipe. So, for instance, back when I taught cooking classes, yes, I am a very food oriented person. My foundational cooking class was called Soups, Salads, and Stir Fries. And actually, you can still get this on Teachable. I should put a link to that in case you wanna take it. But the thing that's interesting to me about soups, salads, and stir fries is that they are all multi-ingredient dishes. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you think of a salad, it has greens in it, and then it'll also have some sort of protein. Maybe it's beans if you're plant-based, or eggs, or whatever protein you like, and then I would encourage you to put in some healthy fats, which would be like some nuts. What kind of nuts? Whatever nuts you like. Walnuts, pine nuts, Brazil nuts. I'm not gonna ask you to put in nuts you'd hate. Just pick the one that you like. Then you might want something sweet, so you might add some sort of berry, or, raisin, or that sort of thing. And then I would also say, "Hey, maybe add in, like, one other vegetable," and it could be, broccoli or cauliflower, that sort of thing. And same thing goes with a soup. You have your foundation, which is, the broth that the soup is in, and then you have the stuff that really gives it flavor, which are the aromatics like onion and garlic, and then, you build from there. So the soup, salads, and stir fry are these multi-ingredient dishes that it's very clear because you can see all the different ingredients, and, versus like a lasagna where it's harder to pick things apart. So that's why I like thinking about my year in terms of a recipe, and I do have that. This is my this is the class I put together years ago, soup, salads, and stir fries. Okay. And so this is why I like thinking about my year as a recipe, because I think about it as, what are the things that I would like to be in my year for my year to be delicious or wonderful, whatever, use whatever adjective you want. And so, for instance, something that I think about is I want a lot of movement in my life. And to that end, I have a goal of 45 sunrise hikes a year. And I also have a goal of, I want to have a lot of time with friends in my life. And so the friends and the movement actually are combined in that goal, because I do these sunrise hikes with friends of mine. And so it's perfect because it gets me lots of movement. I also want to do some camping. I love to camp. And my ideal is 4 camping trips a year. And I also would like to do some sort of creative expression. For those of you who don't know, I do stand-up comedy for fun. And so I actually have a goal of producing 3 comedy shows this year and appearing in another 4 shows that I don't produce. So 7 stand-up comedy appearances minimum. So this is how I think about my recipe. I'd like to do one other trip besides camping trips. It will probably be a domestic trip, not international. And so I'd like to plan for that. I also would like to see my closest girlfriends. There's 4 women who are basically like sisters to me. I've known one of them since I was 11, and the other 3 I've known for, oh my gosh, 25 years, but none of us live in the same state. However, we try to get together at least once a year to do a group vacation. And so I already have that planned actually, and so I wanna have that happen one time a year. So that's my recipe if you think about creative expression, movement, time with friends. I also have goals for BYWD, which is, this weekly podcast is one of the goals for that. And so that's part of my recipe. So think about what would make your year feel really good or delicious or fulfilling. What kind of travel, time with friends, professional endeavors, what would it take? And get as specific as you can. Like, 40 I have 45 hikes. I do wanna do 7 stand-up shows. I wanna do 3 to 4 camping trips. I wanna do 1 other trip. I wanna do the trip with my friends. I'm very specific about it. And then when you have your recipe, then you can actually look at your calendar, and hopefully you have a physical calendar. This is my 2025 calendar. We're huge fans of paper planners, and this is we actually have a whole episode on how to pick the perfect planner. You can check it out there. And this is the planner that I like down below in this QR code, and I'll put these all in the show notes for those listening to the Harness the Power of Planning podcast. But then you can look at your calendar and think, okay, well, when can I do these things? The 45 hikes, I have 2 days a week that I reserve to do sunrise hike. I don't always hit both days, but that's the goal, and that's how it goes into my planner. Camping trips, I have a kiddo in school, so I have to plan around those dates. So you have things that you have to plan around already, commitments. And that's where having a planner is really helpful. Now you have this recipe and you think, okay, well, where can I fit in these things? My girlfriends and I, most of us have kids, and we've all figured out there's this 2-week period that seems to work really well for us. And so we've been planning our trips during that 2-week period for multiple years now because it just seems to work. So look and see, where can you fit in these events. I already have my first comedy show that I'm producing planned. It's already got a date attached to it. I'm looking at when can I fit in the other 2 dates around, these other obligations and responsibilities that I have. But until you have your recipe, it's hard to start putting any action towards things because you don't really know what you're working on. And so think about your year as a recipe and then look at your paper planner and figure out where you can fit those in. I just love to hold this up. So this is my 2024 planner. When everything's said and done, all you can see, it's a lot of life lived. It's about, for those listening to the podcast, it's about what, 8 times thicker than the original planner. Yeah, it's got a lot going on in there once everything's said and done. So that is my number 1 tip for you for how to start thinking about your year in a way to encourage the opportunity of, doing all the things that you say you wanna do. Okay, well, you've said you wanna do them, that's part 1, but now you have to actually make time to do them because, "Oh, I'll do this thing when I have time." There's no part of your planner or calendar that says, "Hey, you have time now to do that thing that you've been talking about doing." No, you have to make time for the things that you say are important to you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you and yours are safe. As Ida Scott Taylor said, make today beautiful in whatever way you can. And I hope that by thinking about your perfect recipe for your year, it will help to make today a little bit more beautiful for you.